The Minister says today's deal, the announcements in relation to infrastructure, will also see red and green tape approval times slashed in half in order to create 66,000 jobs across the country. I'm joined now by the Assistant Minister to the Prime Minister and a very important man in Canberra, the Liberal member for Tagney in Perth, Ben Morton. Ben, talk to me. Thank you very much for coming on the show firstly, but talk to me about red and green tape. I know what it is, you know about it if you're in government, but we use this term all the time. And I think people need to understand just what a handbrake it is on the economy. Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, look, Peter, I'm leading the government's deregulation agenda, and what's important here is that in the environmental space, when you talk about green tape, we have to make sure that we deliver upon strong environmental standards, that we provide approvals that protect the environment that we seek to protect, but also to allow projects to proceed. The approach that we're taking in our de-reg agenda is to make sure that the decision-making around those approvals is done as quickly, as timely and as cost-effective as possible. We're a country that needs to get on and we need to support jobs, particularly in a post-COVID economy, as we recover from COVID-19. And so therefore the announcements made today have been one about supporting jobs, but making sure that there are strong environmental protections in place, but working in partnership with the states to remove some of the unnecessary burdens of time and cost that is there in seeking these approvals as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. No one wants to see the environment degraded anyway, but we've all heard the stories, of a fantastic new project, particularly in a regional area, shut down because of a green frog or an orange-bellied parrot or anything like that. Now, part of the announcement today is a review into the Commonwealth Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. Everybody knows what a handbrake that is. But there's similar or parallel legislation at a state level. There's also all the local government regulations. And I remember talking to Adani 12 years ago when they very early started out in the project in Australia, the early days. And one of their immediate hurdles encountered over 4,000 pages of paperwork. Now, they've got deep pockets, but most companies would come here and say, look, you know what, I'm going to take my money somewhere else. Why would I invest in Australia? That's got to be a consideration, doesn't it?
Oh, it absolutely does, and that's what we've heard from project proponents, is that what they want is they want a process to receive the approval or not receive the approval, but they want the process to be timely, to be efficient and to be cost effective. And that isn't the case when we see very duplicative processes between the state and the Commonwealth as well. Now, the EPBC Act, since its inception, have had an ability to share between the states and the Commonwealth the assessment and decision-making powers. That's something that has been confirmed in the Hawke Review 10 years into the Act, and Graham Samuel's currently concluding a review into the Act now after 20 years after its inception. What the Prime Minister said today is that already he's talking to premiers and territory leaders in relation to the need to respond to Graham Samuel's review when it comes out in the next few weeks, about how we can further ensure that we protect those environmental principles we seek to protect, but make sure we do it in a very timely and efficient way. And that's really important as part of the government's de-reg agenda, that we make sure that decisions, if they're being made, are being made in a very responsive and timely way, but not one that adds to costs onto the project and cost jobs.
How much will this be driven out of an attempt to get some sort of agreement or movement out of the new National Cabinet? And then a secondary question, when the coalition was elected in 2013, part of the rationale was for every regulation that went in, a number of regulations had to be repealed. So, one regulation in, it might be 5 regulations coming out. I know that was done quite a lot in the early years, but then it fell into abeyance under Malcolm Turnbull. Are we back to actually taking away regulations, repealing regulations, collapsing 7 into 2 if we have to? And are you confident, because we've seen National Cabinet working when the PM signs a big cheque, we've seen a lot of problems with schools and state border openings. Are you confident the National Cabinet can work on this agenda as well?
Well, look, National Cabinet has certainly decided to make sure that deregulation across the Commonwealth and the territories is a major focus of the job creation strategy as a result of COVID-19. This is really important, and we need that leadership from top down. In relation to deregulation at a Commonwealth level, I'm responsible for the Office of Best Practice Regulation, That was the entity that managed the offsets that you were just talking about. That did fall away, and I've reinstated a process that will require, in the development of any new policy proposal, a requirement to identify offsets, a requirement to justify why those offsets weren't included in that decision making as well. But Peter, we're maturing our deregulation agenda from the past. What we're doing is we're taking the feedback that we're getting from industry, and that is that they understand that there needs to be an objective. There is an objective that regulation is trying to meet. In fact, your previous guest on your show was talking about the need to regulate one particular industry, and we shouldn't let that be lost upon us. But my point is that we need to accept what is the objective the regulation is trying to meet, and how do we actually meet that objective in the most efficient of ways, in the most timely of ways, and the way that actually doesn't put a cost burden on proponents and on the economy. That's what business is asking us to do, and that is where we're taking the deregulation approach, not just the removing of regulations, but the regulations that are there to make sure that they're processed and they're efficient. And that's why the Prime Minister has made sure that the deregulation agenda is actually coming into his own portfolio of Prime Minister and Cabinet, so we can have a whole of government approach to deregulation.
Look, before we go, before you came into politics, I'm telling my viewers at home, you are a former West Australian State Party director. Looking at these branch stacking issues in Victoria, you've now had two Labor ministers resign today. Is this a broader problem for Labor or just contained to Victoria, do you think?
Look, I'm not often shocked by much in politics, but I was pretty shocked last night when I was watching it, and I've come to the conclusion that people in the Labor Party wouldn't have been shocked. You know, this isn't a single person doing a single deed. There is an issue that's rife in the Labor Party, and it isn't something that would have come as a great surprise to very many people in the Labor Party overnight. I think that's a very important point to make. You know, the involvement of a minister. You know, those I think you're showing them now actually going up to the ANZ Bank ATM and using a blue folder to pass over cash and dodgy forms. You know, there is an individual that has been dismissed today, but it points to a broader, more concerning illness within the Labor Party.